Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar of today. This morning we'll begin about drafting your standards for compliance. We'll share with you the best practices and standards in support of the PPE, the personal protective equipment. My name is Els. I'll be moderating the webinar in the background, so you will not hear me, but I'll be busy in the background. And I would like to inform that all attendees are muted during the presentation, so you do not have the possibility to speak out loud. But we do advise you to use the Q&A panel that you should be able to see in your Q&A panel, in your Zoom panel, sorry, to submit your questions so the speakers can have a look at your questions after the presentations. Should you be on one of our social media channels like LinkedIn, Blue Sky, or Instagram, feel free to talk about the topic with the hashtag training for standards. So without further ado, I think we can dive right away into the presentations. If I'm not mistaken, the first presenter of today is Ivan Arias Roldan, the EC desk officer, who is here with us. So please, Ivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Els. Just to confirm, do you hear me right? Perfect.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Els. Thank you very much to Sen and Senelec and Enson Young and the HAS consultants for organizing this webinar. I think it's very relevant and very interesting to remind some good practices that we can use when developing standards. From my point of view, I will just be brief. I told the colleagues that I have not prepared any slides, but I have prepared 2 slides, just basic ones that I will share with you. Okay, so how's this? I know I cannot. Sorry, I cannot.
Sorry, Ivan, it works now normally.
Okay, yes. So I will. Sorry, because I didn't tell you that I was presenting anything, but I think it's interesting for us if I share just 2 things. And I will go back, we'll go to the basics, very introductory. What are harmonized standards? Harmonized standards is a European standard developed by the European Standards Organization, in this case for PPE, CEN and CENELEC. It is created following a request from the European Commission to one of these organizations, so a request from the European Commission. Manufacturers, other economic operators, or conformity assessment bodies can use harmonized standards to demonstrate that products, services, or processes comply with the relevant EU legislation.
Ivan, excuse me. I'm sorry,
Yes.
but we don't see your slide. We see a gray screen.
Strange. You don't see anything?
No.
It's just a black screen.
That's strange. Maybe if I move back to that's strange. Stop sharing. I will. Why is that? So I will do it again. Let me see. I think that the problem is to put the whole screen mode. When I put the whole screen, if I don't put the whole screen mode, you will see it probably. You see it now?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
So that's the problem of the whole screen mode. So I will minimize this, and I will try to maximize this as much as possible. Okay. Okay, well, that's the way it is. So again, I will start with the basics, which is the definition of harmonized standards, and there we will have all the information that we need to develop the standard. So it's a standard developed by the European Standards Organization. It is created following a request from the European Commission. So the standardization request contains some requirements that need to be taken into account when you are developing the standards. Manufacturers, other economic operators, or conformity assessment bodies can use harmonized standards to demonstrate that products, services, or processes comply with the relevant EU legislation. So the PPE regulation, and in particular the essential requirements in Annex 2, are essential for the good understanding of the and compliance with the PPE regulation. And the reference of harmonized standards must be published in the official journal of the European Union. So what is the whole objective of this drafting, assessment, and citation of standards in the official journal is, as here indicated, it's a tool for the market to make it easier for manufacturers to comply with the relevant EU legislation. So when we're drafting the standards, we have to think about the end users and the usability of the standards and the understanding of what we are writing, the common understanding of what we are writing to the general public. Okay, so that's the whole objective. Also, I would like to address one of during the drafting of the standards. We have experienced that. There are discussions all the time because, of course, this is not mathematics. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. There are words that need some interpretation, and there are different experts taking care of different things. So I think that's very important. And I've seen since I joined as a desk officer for PPE 6 years ago, communication is very important, and understanding that each of us have their own role. And maybe you don't understand why the other person is asking one thing, but there is something. There is a reason why we are asking things. So we need to be patient with us, with all of us. I'm not an expert in the products. You are the expert in the products, the technical committees. I'm an expert in the regulation. The HAS consultants have to assess in the standards on behalf of the Commission. So we have all our roles here, and communication has to be productive and clear, and well, these kind of webinars are very helpful to improve also this kind of thing. So I thank you very much again for this. And I added here some links of the European Commission websites that are relevant for the drafting of the standards. You have here the first link for European standards. You will find there different links. Very interesting is the Vademecum on European standardization. There are 3 documents there. The third one is the most relevant, which is the execution of the standardization request, which have some rules for the drafting of the standards there. Then we have the personal protective equipment website. Relevant is, of course, the PPE regulation. There are some guidelines that sometimes clarify the safety requirements, they're written, because I understand that, as I said, they may be subject to interpretation. That's not the aim, that we want the text to be as clear as possible, but sometimes it's not possible to be that clear. So we try to update the guidelines to make these things clear. So that's another document that you can address to find some solutions to your questions that you may have during the drafting of standards. And the third link that appears in the PPE website is the harmonized standards and the PPE regulation. There you have listed all the harmonized standards and the PPE regulation. You can add the website to your RSS feed. For that, you will need to have an RSS feed plugin in your web browser. So with that, you will have automatic updates when the website is updated. Okay, and the last one is the Commission website for the standardization requests. There you will have on the left side a searching tool. If you put the PPE regulation there, you will see the 3. So you will see the current mandate with the amendment that we have right now, and a former mandate that is already finished, that it was about together with textiles. But you will find there the standardization request with all the details. Okay, and well, that's it. With further ado, I leave the floor to my colleagues to start going into the details of the best practices and recommendations to draft standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan. I will take back the screen. I hope it's visible again to everyone. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So good morning from my side. I'm Frédéric Mlanaro. I'm an account manager at Sen and Senelec, and I'm here together with Jennifer Ogbonna. And for our part, it will be more or less 15 minutes, and we will focus on key reminders related to the processes and Jennifer will give some key reminders related to the Annex Z. But we will go quick because the core part of the webinar today is really for the HAS consultants to explain you what are the best practices and what is best to do for having possibly a compliant assessment in support of the PPE. So I will go again quick for the development processes reminders, because what I'm going to talk about now, we have webinars already that are going more into details. And in the last slide, I have put links to all the trainings and webinars we organized about that. So the innovative process is a process for developing homegrown harmonized standard. The process is based on two main pillars: the mature draft and the CCMC quality check. And the goal of this is to help improve the compliant assessment at the end and to focus the efforts at the beginning of the process rather than at the end. So this is the timeline of the homegrown development process. So as you can see, the very first step is the CCMC quality check that was introduced a bit more than 2 years ago. And you have to request a quality check when your draft is mature enough and is ready to be circulated to inquiry. But before that, you need to request a quality check. We perform the quality check. We give the quality check outcome back to you. You take into account our comments before going for the first assessment request. And for the formal vote part, it's more or less the same principle. When the draft is ready to be circulated for the formal vote, there's the second quality check. And once the comments of the quality check are taken care of, there's the formal vote, the pre-formal vote. We call it assessment. Those are instructions for you to request the quality check. I will not go through this slide, but I put it there for you. In a nutshell, when you are ready to go for the quality check, you should contact HSC by email. All the details are there. And as well, you should provide all the supporting elements, meaning the Annex Z, ZZZA, depending if you're CEN and CENELEC, and all the supporting documents for your standards. We saw it in the previous slide, but you can have a maximum of 4 assessments per work item. And if your standard is already published, you cannot request an assessment anymore. And we hope now that the assessment, the LCA assessment, so the last confirmatory assessment, we hope that this will become exceptional, because now normally you have to start early. And by starting earlier, you should potentially avoid having the need for the LCA. For the projects developed in parallel with ISO and IC, the key factors here are the consensus building at European and international level, and as well, you need to have a strong communication and coordination between the European TC and the international TC, so that when the international draft is ready to be circulated for parallel CDD, let's say, at European level, you have the European annexes that are ready to be provided for the quality check or for the assessment request. And then for harmonized standard, it's very useful because, as you know, the same standards applies worldwide, and at the same time, it provides presumption of conformity if it's cited in the official journal. So the new process for parallel projects, the goal is the same as the homegrown process, is to improve timely delivery of compliant harmonized standard, and as well to avoid having projects blocked at the end before the publication. And as well, because the projects are developed in parallel with ISO and IC, we wanted to minimize the interference with the international project timeframe. So this is the timeline of projects developed in parallel. If there's a CD draft circulated at international level, and depending on the duration of the CD, we will perform a quality check on the European element or not. But if there's a CD draft, there's a mandatory CD assessment. Again, there's a link in the slide at the end on a webinar specifically dedicated to project developed in parallel, harmonized standard developed in parallel with ISO and IC, where all the details are provided. And so what is key for the development of standards in parallel is to start the process early. And here again, the European TCs are invited to closely follow the work at international level so that the European annexes and all relevant documents are ready for the CD draft and are ready to be provided for the quality check or the assessment. The new process will apply only if there's a CD available and if the European elements are available. And as Ivan was saying, and we highlighted a lot, communication is key. Here, it's about communication between the Senelec TC and the international TC. But I have it in the next slide as well. The communication with the HAS consultant as well is key to ensure a successful development and a successful outcome at the end. For a project developed in parallel, the common checklist is not mandatory, but it's highly recommended as it will help you identify elements in your draft that could potentially lead to a lack of compliant assessment, and you will be able to check to see what the HAS consultants are using as a template to perform the assessment. I will go very quick on this one because we will come back to that. The HAS consultant will come back to that. So please use the common checklist to perform your self-assessment. For the requirements, you please draft clear and verifiable provisions. The HAS consultant will come back to that in their part. Same thing for the normative references. They should be dative, active, and published when the harmonized standard is published. And for the normative references, it's recommended to refer to a specific clause within the normative reference to avoid issues with the chains of normative references. Here I put the link to the CCMC guidance document page. We have a lot of documents here. Please do your homework, have a look, and you will find very useful information to help you draft your standard. And so those are the links to the webinars we organized, a lot of documents here, and same thing for Senelec. That's it for me. I will leave the floor now to Jennifer for the following part. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. To move on to the next slide. So I'm also going to present a reminder of the requirements that you must address when drafting your standards. These couple of slides are not new. I presented them already in several plenary meetings, but we would like to repeat the message. These requirements are very important, and it's really essential that you take into considerations these requirements when drafting your standards. The non-compliance of these requirements can lead to the non-citation of the PPE standards in the official journal. Right? No. So the first requirement is laid down in Part A, Annex 2 of the PPE standardization request, which reads that when a harmonized standards does not cover all the essential requirements which are applicable to the PPE falling under its scope, the standard shall indicate the essential requirements applicable to those PPE that are not covered by it. In the next couple of slides, we will see some visual presentation of this. In addition, the European Commission requests that technical committees list all the essential requirements of the PPE regulation in the first column of the Annex ZA, which some of you are already doing. These essential requirements are to be listed irrespective of whether they are covered, not covered, or not applicable to the standard in order to ensure that all requirements have been duly considered. So here's a visual representation. So you are to list all the essential requirements in the first column of the Annex ZA in a numerical order. So once this is done, the technical committee is to identify from those essential requirements listed in the first column of the Annex A, which ones are applicable to your products and covered by the standards. And once you've identified this, you're to indicate in the second column of the Annex A, the clause. So you can see here, for example, the essential requirement 1.1.2.2 is covered in clause 6.1.2 of the standard. Next slide, please. So once that is done, the next phase is for the technical committee to also identify which essential requirements applicable to your products but not covered by the standard. So here, the technical committee has identified that the essential requirement 1.1.1 on economics is not covered in the standard, and they have indicated that in the third column. Next slide, thank you. So following the request of the European Commission to list all the essential requirements in the first column of the Annex A, once you have identified those clauses that are covered, once you've identified those essential requirements that are covered in the standard and not covered in the standard, the Commission requests that the technical committee indicates in the third column of the Annex A those essential requirements that are not applicable to your products and not covered in the standards. You will receive more information in the slides of the HAS consultants in a couple of minutes. The second requirement that we would like to emphasize here is from Article 4 of the PPE standardization request, which reads that Senelec shall include in each revised standard information on significant changes that were introduced in that standard. There are not a lot of technical committees that are doing this, so it's really important to identify these technical changes, the significant changes. These changes are to be indicated in the European forward of the European standards. Next slide. This information is important for several actors to understand the impact of the modification to the products on the market. For example, it's important for the manufacturers to have an idea, to have a first idea on the need to redesign their products. So when they have a look at the European forward, they have the idea to redesign their products, and then they would have to go to the clauses of the standards to really see the changes. It's also important for the notified bodies, market surveillance authorities, and the European Commission to understand the overall impact and to assess any transition period for the superseded standards. Next slide. You can also find this requirement in several documents like the Vademecum on European standardization and the PPE guidelines document. This requirement is also in line with Senelec in Internal Regulations Part 3, and I've also included a guidance document which is available on Senbos on the identification of significant technical changes in revised in European standards. So I think that's it from my side. So we'll give the floor to EY.
Yes, good morning. I will just look if I have control. Okay, great. So good morning, my name is Milko, and I will be presenting shortly what EY, the role of EY in the whole HAS process. First of all, thank you CCMC for providing this platform to give a bit of explanation to the TCs and to everybody who is present of what the whole HAS process involves mainly in the PPE sector. So here's a short overview of the support team. So on the UI side, we have Yoko, who is the project manager, and then Dan, who is the core team leader of the project. and then Emilia and I, who are the day-to-day operational supports for the HAS process. And then you have Julia and Hannah concluding the team. Julia, who is doing the HAS operations, and lastly, Hannah is involved in the invoicing. So most importantly, EY subcontracts the house consultants, and for the PPE sector, this is Adam and Jose, who will be also presenting later the more technical part of this presentation to you. A short overview again of the key stakeholders in the house process. So you have us, EY, who subcontract the house consultants. We are contracted by the European Commission, and in close collaboration with the European standardization organizations. We are kind of the middleman between the Commission and the ESOs. And then you have the technical committees, who are very important in the whole house process by providing the standards. So in the house project, we cover 22 sectors, where PPE is a smaller sector, but nonetheless a very important sector in the whole house project. And a short overview of what we actually do is we see as EY that the house project is a service we provide to the European Commission, but also to the technical bodies of the European Standardization Organization. And our main aim is to increase the compliance of harmonized standards, so that we can increase the publication rate of these standards in the OGEU. What we do and our main features is we ensure that the typical compliance concerns are identified to reduce non-compliance, and this is done by the HAS consultants who review the assessments. And then we provide targeted training and support to HAS consultants, ESOs, and the internal European Commission services. This is one of those trainings that we provide, and this is supporting this task too. And then we support the European Commission in its efforts to reduce the number of non-cited harmonized standards. And lastly, we ensure that the HAS consultants, and this is mostly Emilia and I, and Dan, who do the main operations, we ensure that the HAS consultants have all the necessary documents and all the necessary information so that their resources can be completely focused to the assessments of compliance of the harmonized standards. A short overview of the process, which was already a bit explained by Frédéric. But the technical bodies, they do first a short self-assessment of the standard, and then it goes to CCMC, where they do a quality check, and then the standard arrives with us, and then we will allocate the standard to a HAS consultant to complete a good assessment of the standard. After the HAS consultant has completed this compliance assessment, the assessment goes to a quality review team, which is also present here today. And the quality review team will do the horizontal checks, and this can lead to a green, yellow, or red light. If it's a yellow or red light, this means that the assessment will go back to the HAS consultant, who will need to go over it again and adjust a bit of its comments, so it's very clear and it's a very good assessment. And then the assessment is sent back to Sensenelec, and also to the European Commission. Frédéric already explained the stages when you can request an assessment. We really want to emphasize that it's very important to request assessments at the most early stages so that it can go to all the 4 assessment stages if necessary. So the first is the committee draft stage, then we have inquiry, formal vote, and then the last conformity assessment. Then I will give a short recap of the role of the HAS consultant. So the role of the HAS consultant is really to perform verification and assessment tasks. They work in support of, but not represent the Commission. So the HAS consultants are subcontracted by EY, so they are not subcontracted by the Commission, but they convey the Commission's position to the ESOs, so to the European standardization organizations or to their technical bodies. The HAS consultants are not allowed to modify their reports or assess revised documents during meetings with the technical committees. And they do especially not contribute to the standards development process. They are here for assessment, not for developing these standards. Then now I will go a bit more in depth to the PPE sector. So what we see from the EY side is that most of the assessments requests we receive are in inquiry and formal vote stage. We really, again, urge you to also request more in the committee draft stage. So the earlier you request an assessment of these standards, the more chance there is for compliance later on in the process. And also what's very important is that in between two assessments, the technical committees are encouraged and are able to request meetings with house consultants to ask clarifications about the assessments. So again, in the meetings, it's not there, the house consultants are not there to help you draft the standards, but more to provide clarifications on the comments that were received on the assessments. Then a big part of what we do is to ensure that this process is all delivered in 35 days. That's our KPI at EY. As we see, we were very good on timeliness in the past couple of years and quarters. The last quarter of 2025 was a bit of a slower quarter on timeliness. This was mainly due to some sectors receiving a higher amount of assessment requests than was previously prevalent. So a lot of assessment requests came with the same consultant, but this is all being solved right now, and the timeliness will go up again. When we look at compliance outcomes, if you look at the house sector overall, we see that 3/4 of all assessments requested have a lack of compliance, which is normal. And we see that the PPE sector does it a bit better with 69% of the assessments receiving a lack of compliance rating and 23% receiving a compliance. What we see, and I will not go over all the details in depth because Jose and Adam will explain it in more detail, but what we see is why there are mostly non-compliance given by the consultants is that most of the assessments do not meet the Annex Z properly. That the Annex Z not properly relates the relevant legal requirements of EU legislation to the clauses or subclause of the document. And the second most prevalent reason is that the Annex Z is not sufficiently detailed in describing which clauses or subclauses support relevant EU legislation, with no ambiguity or need for interpretation. But this will all be explained a bit more in depth by Jose and Adam. Then if we look at the share of assessment request outcomes by stages in the PPR sector, then we see that the non-compliance rate really lowers when we go further into the process. So this is also why it's very important to request your assessments at early stages at committee draft stages. So in committee draft stages, it's normal that a lot of redrafting is required because this is the start of the process. But when we look at formal votes and last conformity assessment, we see that redrafting required really diminishes, and we go more into minor or limited number of changes are required and more compliant assessments. Within the house system, we constantly try to improve. So that's also why we implemented during the years some changes. So we avoid now changing consultants between different assessments as much as possible. This is also very good that the same consultant always will assess the same standards. Then we try to improve speed of resolution when there are discrepancies in assessments, and improve coordination between the consultants when multiple consultants will assess the same standard. We also try to increase the consistency through guidance and training. This is one of those trainings, and streamline the process of meeting requests that the TCs can do with the consultants. And lastly, we try to increase the communication and mutual learning with technical committees, which also this is part of. So then lastly, a short reminder of meeting requests. So it is encouraged to request meetings in between stages. This can be done very easily through the link that's provided on this slide. You can look into that in the whole slides that we are giving today, because they will be provided later by CCMC. This was mostly it from my part, and now I will give the word to Adam and Jose, who will explain more in detail the technical part of this presentation. Adam?
Adam, Jose, will you take the control of the slides?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid that it could be a little bit difficult for me because I'm logging as a participant. I'm not sure if I have a possibility to show the presentation. Maybe Mirko can open our presentation. Is it possible for you? Do you have?
Or Milko, if you want to keep the control as you like.
Yes, of course.
Well, I believe that the presentation from the HAS consultants will be shared by both consultants with Adam, and through the presentation, we will change from one consultant to another consultant depending on the slide we have. Do you agree, Adam?
Yes. Please start with your
Okay. Then the first point is the general rules is considering what is the aim of harmonized standards. Next slide, please. Well, a harmonized standard must be drafted to provide technical solutions to satisfy the essential requirements of the regulation that are applicable to a given product. Then the harmonized standard is a tool to help manufacturers to comply with the requirements in the regulation. In that way, conformity with a harmonized standard, the reference number of which has been published in the official journal, provides a presumption of conformity with the applicable essential requirements of the regulation. But it has to be considered also that the presumption of conformity is only given within the limits of the scope. Next one. No. Okay. The technical solution must provide a concrete and mandatory requirement, the full way how the requirement is verified, and the pass-fail criteria. If any of those requirements are missing or incomplete, the essential requirement cannot be considered as satisfied. Okay? Next one. Next one. Well, maybe that Adam can start now.
Okay, thank you very much, Jose. They are making some, let's say, general mistakes preparing the foreword of the standard according to the rules and your own rules. The foreword should not contain any requirements or legal or technical interpretation. Please be very careful when you are drafting foreword of the standard. What is very important also for us is the list of changes with respect to the previous version of standard. This list should be very detailed to show the users of the standard, also market surveillance inspectors and notified bodies, the important changes in a new version of the standard. Because of the basis of this information, some of notified bodies decide to retest product, for example, or or to not start any action on the products. Next slide, please. It is very also important, and it's a formal requirement that scope does not set any requirements. From time to time, you are making a mistake and add some statements that sounds like requirements. For example, in case of filtering half mask, if you add to the scope that the standards contain requirements for one-time use half mask, and it's nothing. It is requirement, in fact. Especially if the standard do not contain anything about time.
Okay, next one.
We lost you, I think.
Can you put the next slide, please? Well, one of the problems with the scope is lack of indication of part of the body protected. Remember that at the beginning we have said that the presumption of conformity is given.
Safe time of use of.
Sorry? The presumption of conformity is given only within the limits of the scope. Then the scope should be absolutely clear what is covered. For example, in the first line, we have, well, those points all has been taken from different standards. One standard said that the product providing protection to the wearer, but the doubt is what part of the wearer is protected. That is not correct. And then the next point that will be correct will be providing protection to the full body of the wearer. In that way, that is clear for the standard users what the standard covers. Another point that is very often to find in different standards is the scope gives no indication of the risk against which the PPE protects. For example, one that is not correct is providing protection to the user, but is not set against what is protected. And then the correct one could be providing protection to the hands of the user against heat and fire. In the way, also, the standard user knows that the product protects the hands, and that protection is provided against the heat and the fire. Next one. Adam?
I think, thank you very much, Jose. That's always we speak about during this kind of seminars, we speak about the normative references. So for sure, you know this information, but just to remind you, please give only dated references in the standard. Of course, some exceptions are possible in case of ISO standards drafted in parallel, but in this case, you should prepare a special annex containing the specific year of the version of the standard applicable for different points. In the end, Annex ZA2 or something like that, depending on the type of the committee. And what is important also for us, please give also the references to clauses or sub-clauses or paragraphs to this standard. We will not accept general references just to the standard. Usually the standards contain a lot of requirements, and it's very difficult for users to find appropriate test method or other requirements or testing methods. only some type of standard normative references are accepted. First of all, to other European standards, also to international standards, and ISO, ISO ESA standards, and also to, for example, CS standard, International Committee for Lighting and standards. Okay, next slide. Also, in some cases, references to drafts can be accepted when the drafts are developed in parallel. Typical example, the testing method. In this case, we give you a conditional compliance because both of the standards must be finished before the publication of the link to the official journal of European Union. And what is important for us, please check the availability of the references to drafts for consultant before you send the requirement standard for assessment. If we will not have a possibility to see these drafts, for sure we will give you a negative decision, non-compliance. And please do not give informative references in clauses that generate legal effects. This is also not acceptable. It happens from time to time in case of some references to pretreatment method, for example. Next slide, please. I think it's Jose. Some examples prepared by Jose.
Well, that is an example of what it happens very often in many documents drafted to become a harmonized standard. For example, is referenced in the first line. You can see that reference in normative reference is made to EN 13087-1, but that is not correct because if you remember through many other training meetings, it was decided and accepted by Commission and by the Sen and Senelec that all the references has to be dated, and then the correct one will be EN 13087-1 2000. And then is the end, that is no problem. Then the second case is for ISO. ISO is a little bit different because you can have, for example, a reference to ISO 9227, but the ISO standard doesn't include a table CETA A2 that make reference to the dated standards and also to the corresponding ENN standards. And then this will not be correct. The second line, ISO 9227, but including a table CETA A2 or maybe ISO 9227 2022, that will be correct. Sometimes in standards they make reference to other standards that are not EN nor ISO or IC. And then, for example, make reference to HTM standard D6482-21. This will be not acceptable because this is not a standard accepted by the Commission and the Senelec. Next one, please.
Thank you very much. In addition to Jose's slide, I think that it's good to check always the last version of the standard that you give reference and any amendments, because from time to time forgot to put the reference to the existing last version of the standard. It also always will result to non-compliance decision. For what is very important for us and also for the Commission, the normative part of the documents will contain requirements that are coherent with European legislation, with PPE regulation. Something is outside this regulation, it should be clearly separated for the rest of the standard. It sounds a little bit general that technical solution should define clear objective and repeatable test method and requirements. But I think it's one of the main reasons for non-compliance that we the negative decision that we give you. Please remember to give clear pass for criteria references to the objective test method, and I think it's a basis for your work. It's not possible to give references to alternative test methods without the clear selection criteria. It's not possible that manufacturer can decide which kind of methods will be used, or even notified body. It must be clearly stated in the standard which test method is applicable for which type of products. That's a good example. If you have, for example, gas permeation, I can give the reference to method A, for liquid permeation to method B. But if you try to give this references to two different testing methods for the same product, that the result will be the same. We'll make a comment and information that it's not allowed. And the same for different type of protectors. For example, plastic perforation insert in footwear. Okay, a method A could be applied. For metal perforation insert, method 2. It's possible that you will also give the references to different pretreatment method for this kind of elements. As I said, conditional choices are allowed if you give clear objective criterion for each choice. Next slide, please. There are some explanation what we mean, what means this word reproducible, appropriate, objective, verifiable. And first, a clear specification of testing device is very important for us. Description on sampling and testing procedure. It's good practice to add also the data important for uncertainty of measurement. And for most of the samples, also information concerning pretreatment, ambient condition, time for pretreatment. So also, if it's important, also the number of samples. Next, test method should simulate as possible rare condition of use, taking into account also intensity and duration of hazards. I think one of the, let's say, best examples are protectors against cut by handheld chainsaw. In fact, you promise that this kind of protector should protect against the risk of cutting, but when I check the testing method, okay, there's protection, but only against unpowered chainsaw. So it's covered only, let's say, maybe 20, maybe 30% of risk situation at workplace. So this kind of situation must be avoided, or you should add the clear information in the instruction for users that the protection is limited. This test method should be also objectively verifiable. So you should give the maximum values that's allowed for forces, for example, or the range of forces, if it's depending of course of the risk. Clear pass and fall criteria. What is good, as I said, the including of data necessary for uncertainty of measurement is a good practice. It's not anyway included in the requirements, formal requirements, but it is also the part of the accreditation process for notified bodies. So this data are very important, I think, for the user of the standard. Next slide, please. You can see the good practice, uncertainty of measurements. There are no the same approach in different sectors for the uncertainty of measurement. I think the PPE sector is I think one of the best because most of the standard contain this kind of data. In some standards, you have very also clear recommendation to use guides to expression of uncertainty. So I think that in our sector, the situation is very good. What is quite also important, but also regulated by the law, use of SE units is recommended. Please avoid to give the requirements in PSI, for example, in case of pressure or something like that. Miles on different the measurement units. Next slide, please. Please remember that your requirements should focus on the first of all, safety parameters rather than specification of material. So if you have requirements concerning mechanical properties, please try to specify the forces, not minimum thickness of material. Because if you specify minimum thickness of the material, you will reduce possibility to apply the new innovative, for example, materials or construction of the products. So this is the reason that we try to convince to this approach based on the requirements, technical requirements for products. Please remember also that this standard should focus on the role on the essential health and safety requirements, not the role of the manufacturers or testing laboratories. Also, in some cases, in all cases, the routine tests are not harmonized, should not be included in harmonized part of the standard, because there are nothing about routine tests in essential health and safety requirements. So it's not should not be included in this harmonized part of the standard. You can, of course, add the requirements for routine tests, but it should be in separated part of the standard, some kind of annex, for example. And please do not add anything which is not included in essential requirements. If you will find some requirements in text of the regulation, it doesn't mean that you can add to your harmonized standard technical solution for this part of the regulation. The harmonized part of the standard should always refer to essential requirements given in Annex 2 in case of PPE regulation. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Well, one of the problems that also comes from the requirement is, like as Adam said, is lack of clarity in the drafting of the standard. For example, some standards many times they make reference to non-specific requirements. For example, material shall be sufficiently strong. But shall be sufficiently strong, in fact, doesn't mean nothing, because everybody can believe that a different requirement for that strongness, and then a correct requirement could be tensile strength shall be higher than 100 newtons. In that case, that will be correct. Another problem that sometimes appears in the standards is that there are some requirements, but there is not test procedure. For example, the product shall be close-fitting and able to be worn without discomfort or significant restriction to head movements and without reducing the field of view. That is the requirement. The requirement, in fact, is quite clear, but there is no test method to verify the requirement. And then that requirement doesn't verify the essential requirement. And then the correct one could be the product shall be close-fitting and able to be worn without discomfort or significant restriction to head movement and without reducing the field of vision, but adding testing according to, for example, EN, sorry, ENXXX. Next one, please. It also that sometimes, very often, it happens in the standards, is that, for example, unclear requirements. For example, an standard say any garment and its components shall meet the relevant requirements of ISO 13688 in addition to the requirements set in this document. But in that case, nobody knows what relevant requirements it refers. And then to be clear, the standard drafters has to be make reference to the specific clauses of the standard referred. For example, any garment and its components shall meet the requirements in 4.2 and 4.3 of ISO 13688 in addition to the requirements set in this document. Because if not, it's impossible for the standard users to check which relevant requirements it refers. And it could happen that each different test laboratory consider relevant different requirements. And then this will lead to different results that it will be not acceptable. Next one, please. Neutrality principle. In fact, the harmonized standards are drafted to set requirements only for the product, not for any other part related to the product. For example, sometimes it is possible to find in the standards test procedure will shall be provided by the manufacturer. That is not acceptable because in that case different manufacturers could provide different test procedures. And then the requirement one is that the procedure must be defined in the own standard. Another question that sometimes appears that is related mainly to testing standards that make reference in the harmonized standard. It is said that samples shall be selected and from the one is set in the testing standard. But the testing standard may reference samples selected as agreed between interested parties. This will be not acceptable. Is the standard the one that has to define from where the samples must be selected? Next one, please. In the normative part, no, usually they make reference to testing standards. That, for example, in one standard it is said that tensile strength shall be verified according to EN ISO 13934-1 2013. But the problem is that that standard refers to the number of samples to be tested as at least or as a minimum. This means that more samples may be tested. This could lead to different results. In fact, as has been said at the beginning of the presentation, a concrete number of samples must be indicated. For example, for tensile strength, 3 samples in each direction, warp and weft, shall be tested according EN ISO 13394-1 2013. In that way, this will avoid any misinterpretation of the applicability of the standard. Another question that appears is at least 3 samples of each type of shield shall be supplied for testing. Again, 3 samples of, to be correct is no at least, because at least means that more samples could be supplied. The correct one will be 3 samples of each type of shield shall be supplied for testing. Next one. Cleaning. Sorry, no. Please, the slide related to cleaning. No, I read that up. Ergonomic No, the one before. No, another one above requirements not, but cleaning. The slide related to cleaning. That this is no.
I'm
That
sorry,
is
but
that is okay. That is okay. No, it's not that. The one related to cleaning, the one before. No, that is okay. Well, when you look at the regulation, you can see in the essential requirement 1.4 that make reference a procedure that has to be specified by the manufacturer related to cleaning, maintenance, storage, etc., etc. That means that the regulation gives freedom to the manufacturer to select the cleaning procedure he wants for his product. The only condition set by the regulation is that the cleaning or maintenance or whatever the procedure informed by the manufacturer has not to have dangerous effects on the product itself. For example, it is, sometimes is from the time it has been corrected, but still there are many standards that, when related to the cleaning, that cleaning in fact is a pretreatment procedure, make reference not to the procedure related by the manufacturer, but to specific standards. For example, as you can see in the slide, samples shall be washed 3 times before testing using Type B washing machine and parameters, etc., in accordance with ISO 6330 and AATCC 1993 detergent. That in fact is not correct because this is against the regulation, because the regulation, the essential requirement for allows the manufacturer to decide which procedure for cleaning or maintenance has to be used. And then the correct one could be before testing, samples shall be cleaned according to the manufacturer instructions. Okay, next one, please. Well, another problem that appears sometimes in the standards is related to the way to express the results. Sometimes the members of the working groups forget that in the test methods are tested several samples, not only one sample. And then for example, they'll explain that the result shall be expressed as the arithmetic mean, the average of the results from the individual test specimen. That seems correct, in fact, is not correct from the point of view of harmonized standards, because it could happen that the average complies with the requirement, but some individual results fails. This would not be acceptable. And then one of the solutions that has been used by several working groups in the past is to qualify the average. And then if you qualify the average saying that the average is to be used to express the final result by considering that all the individual values comply with the requirement, that is correct and that is no problem. Another way to express the final result is to use the lower of the individual values or the higher of the individual values, depending on the requirement that has to be met. Next one, please. That is for you, Adam.
Yes, it's my slide. I think it's quite important because it's one of the main reasons of non-conformity. Please do not copy and paste essential requirements directly to the standard without added value. You can see the three examples on this slide of the essential requirements that you are copy and paste very often. and please do not do it. Please give always the references to some assessment method, testing method. Um, I think that the main problem is for this moment for this innocuousness of the personal protective equipment. We have some bad examples that some standards are could be rejected from the list of the harmonized standard. I'm talking about the respiratory protective devices because of a lack of test method for innocuousness of PPEs. Probably in next years, some member state could be more active, and we have the same problem not only for respiratory protective devices, but for example for clothing or footwear or other type of PPEs. So please start to think about reasonable testing method for these essential health and safety requirements. I think that you can try to use the similar approach as for toys, because they had similar problems a few years ago. Now they developed a series of standards for toys for the testing of innocuousness. And as I said, the second problems are with ergonomics. If you declare that for example, that PPE must be free of road surfaces, sharp edges, or something like that. Please give the reference to the assessment method, to the some kind of questionnaire, for example, or field testing, or something like that. Without this reference, it's a very clear reason for our comment and lack of compliance. Next slide, please.
Well, that is related to ergonomics. What is correct and what isn't correct, because it has been said that the test method or ways of verification has to be complete to avoid any misinterpretation or misuse of the product. For example, in one standard you can find to assess the requirement for one, an observer should monitor the test subject experience and answer the following questions. Was it possible to put on and remove the protector without difficulty? Were you able to adjust the protector according to the manufacturer instruction? Can the following movements be carried out without difficulty? And does the protector remain in place during each movement? And then explain three movements. People removing the part of the body that maintain the product, bending the waist, twisting, jumping, etc., or walking at moderate speed. The first point that you can see is that moderate speed means nothing, because for one maybe 2 kilometers hour, for others maybe 20. I don't know, but in fact, if you look at the requirement in the standard, it lacks how many times the movements 1, 2, and 3 have to be repeated, and what is moderate speed, and how long the subject must walk. The first part that is crossed with the red X is not correct, and if you add the recommendation given in the last part of the slide, then the requirement will be acceptable and will verify several essential requirements. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. Another problem is that the standard it refers to some apparatus, but it make no reference to the characteristic of the apparatus. That, for example, in our standard you can find CRE machine shall be used for testing, but this really means nothing, because it lacks almost all the characteristics of the CRE machine that are necessary to have a good reproducible results when you use this machine to make some test. Next one, please. I believe that it's for you, Juan.
Yes, some general remarks concerning Annex ZA. As you remember, the problems with Annex ZA lead to the many non-conformities. First of all, Annex ZA should contain references to relevant points or sub-points despite general clauses. Please do not give references to, let's, for example, whole standard, informative annexes, of course, scope, which should not contain any requirements, because this kind of references in Annex ZA are not acceptable. The same is for testing method. Please give only references to points containing requirements. In theory, Annex ZA should support risk assessment related to products. So please remember about requirements covered that are not covered by the standard. If something is not covered, please write in the annex that Annex ZA that this essential requirements applicable for product is not covered. And it's very important, and it's a little bit strange for me that after many years of our work, you are still give references to taking into account the title of the essential requirements, and you not read the information in point or clauses of essential requirements. The good example is PPE subject to aging. This essential requirement refers to the requirements given in instruction for users, not to the test methods concerning aging of the products. Next slide, please.
Well, next, I believe that is for me.
Yeah. Yes.
Very often, what the working group decide which essential requirements apply, they look only to the heading of the essential requirement, forgetting that the essential requirement content provides information about how the essential requirement must be applied and even how the essential requirement can be satisfied. Considering only the ER heading can lead to mistakes in its application and compliance. And then make that the working group then use clauses not related to the essential requirement as the way to verify the essential requirement. For example, when it refers to essential requirement, I believe that is 2.2, that make reference to adjustable components or replaceable components. The title may apply to different situations, but if you look at the content, it refers only to the items used for reparation or compliance of the product, not to the applicability of the product to verify or satisfy some essential requirement. And then it's recommended that one decide which essential requirements apply, is recommended that the complete content of the essential requirement must be considered. Next one, please. The other point that in the last times is probably the more important point that fails to comply the standards is the one refers to the layout of the Annex A. Because in the table you can see that table, you say, well, this is okay. But when you look at the standardization request, you can see that this layout doesn't comply with what the standardization request requires. In the next slide, please. In this standard is the same that the table before, but is already considering the requirements in the standardization request. You can see in the second column that it is made reference to the clauses of the standard that verify the essential requirement, and then in the third column you make a reference to essential requirements that in fact are applicable but are not covered by the standard, and other essential requirements that really are not applicable. This is very important for the manufacturer, because for the harmonized standards, it's not mandatory that the standard verifies all the applicable essential requirements. However, for manufacturers to put the product in the market, the product has to satisfy all the applicable essential requirements. That layout allows the manufacturer to see that in addition to the requirements in the standard itself, it has to look for test methods and requirements for those essential requirements that are applicable but not covered. Like, for example, the first and second line, or others that it put not covered. Not covered means that the essential requirement is applicable, but the standard doesn't take consideration of it. Next one. That is another point that very often is used for standard drafters to make reference to standards that verify the essential requirement. In that layout, you can see that, for example, for the first essential requirement, it made references to clause 411, and in the remarks note, it make reference to ISO 13688 plus the amendment. But when you look at 411, the only you say is that the only that you can see is the product has to comply with ISO 13688. That means that really the standard doesn't cover that requirement. That requirement is covered in ISO 13688. That means that manufacturers, when they use harmonized standard to satisfy the requirement or the regulation, maybe that several times it has to use several standards, not only one standard. And in fact, Annex A should simply describe the relation between the clause of the standard, the document, and the relevant legal requirements. Next one. I believe that if Adam agree with me, I believe that the consultant has finished the presentation and only wait to if they have to answer some questions raised by the attendants of the meeting.
Yes, I think that you mentioned the most important things, particularly these requirements concerning covered or not covered requirements. You're making a lot of mistakes trying to give references direct or not direct to other standard in Annex ZA. It's not, let's say, allowed by the European Commission. So I don't think that it's a good idea to create special tables in the standard and give references to the rows of this standard and next to the Annex ZA. If the main or the let's say general requirements are covered by other standards, it's enough to write in the body of the standard, in the text, which standard is applicable, and in the just information that your standard cover all the only additional requirements. I think it's the best approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Jose, for your presentation. I think it's time now to move to the Q&A session. So we have 35 minutes in total for the Q&A. So I propose that Adam, Jose, please go to the Q&A chat. And I propose if there are questions there that you can address, maybe you can read them and address the question. And on our side as well, I think we answered quite a lot of questions already in a written way. But if you see interesting questions in the Q&A that could be beneficial to everyone, please read them and answer them. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that I can try to ask the first question concerning risk management. I'm afraid there is no recommendation for this for the risk management and the risk assessment terminology.
So Adam, if you may, I will read the question from
Yes, please.
wow, sorry, I mispronounced probably your name. So the question is there any practice or recommendation for the use of risk management and risk assessment terminology aligned with ISO 31000 and related standards?
I'm sorry, but we don't have any recommendation for this for the risk management. Maybe it's a good idea to prepare some kind of recommendation, because risk management is important, I think. But it's a job, I think, for you, not for us as consultant.
A good thing for us to start thinking about such a document. So we can take it on this year. So let's go to the next question. Question from Klaus Michael. I would disagree with the requirement that test method should simulate real conditions for use. Often it is a stress test and qualification of material only. You would not dive with a chemical protective suit for 480 minutes in organic substances, but that's the official testing. A person never can use a total encapsulated suit in liquid for so many hours.
I think that I should also answer this question, because I assessed this standard. The main reason for testing and preparing requirements is to prove that the product offered is safe for the user, first of all, and second, offer protection against risk at the workplaces. If you do not try to simulate real condition, probably the result of test will not be, let's say, valuable for the end user, and the product could be dangerous. I think I understand that it's very difficult to simulate real condition of use, but please try to simulate this condition as much as possible. And if it's not possible, you should add explanation in instruction for users to inform the users of the product that there are some limits and concerning the safety and time of use, for example, maximum concentration of chemicals or something like that. This is important for us. Thank you.
Well, although it's not mandatory that the test method represent the process of use of the product, it's highly recommended that the test method has to match as possible the real situation, because in fact, if not, many times it have no sense to have the test. If, for example, you have several methods to verify the tear resistance of the products. One of them is the thermal sample, but the thermal sample really is not related to the real situation of tear when the end user is using the product. Maybe that is a comment from, but it's not a recommendation. But there is an ISO standard that, for example, that match a little bit more the tear resistance of a fabric to the real situation. Is that some weight is left down for the gravity and their impact on the fabric and produce the air. This is more representative than the other, but it's not a question of, well, that is not a question, at least for me, and I believe that for Adam also, to make the assessment negative if the standard drafters are using one or another method. But as possible, as much as possible, it is highly recommended that the drafters of the standard use test method as close as possible to the real situations.
I think that I should also I'll try to answer the next question concerning gas capacity of filters. I think it is some kind of misunderstanding because the gas capacity, it's let's say the parameter more related to the possible time of use of the product. But for us, for me as a gas consultant, the main reason for testing of product is to prove that the amount of the danger chemicals going to the reaching the respiratory tract is below the occupational exposure limits of these chemicals. It is very important, particularly for toxic substances. It's not included in the standard for this moment. And I think that's the main reason for the rejection of this standard. So please think about the safety of the user, not of the parameters of the products. Focus on the safety of the user, not the parameter of the product, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. So yeah, Chloe, for sorry, Adam, you just addressed the last question from Chloe, the complementary question.
Yeah, I've seen the question concerning the capacity of the gas filters.
Yeah, I was talking about this one. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The next one I see from Sonia about question related to the testing procedure. This looks quite specific. Sonia, I would invite you to contact us and give us more detail about your case, and we will try to help you. I see a question from Sven. On the page marked as no copy and paste of essential requirements, you said that test methods have to be defined, e.g. the clause essential requirement 1.2.1.2. How can we define a method if the requirement is not defined, e.g. PPE must be free of rough surfaces? What defines a rough surface is?
Well, I believe that the requirement and the test method has to be defined by the working group.
Yes, if you do not have an idea how to give an added value, just please do not copy and paste these requirements. Because if the same text is in the regulation and the standard, it's no sense. It not makes any sense.
But sometimes it happens that the working group make mandatory a test method, but they forget the requirement. Then it has no sense to test something if you don't have a requirement.
Mm.
Always it has to be linked a requirement with the test method and the pass fail criteria.
I think in this kind of essential requirements, you can try to give references, for example, to the field testing, visual inspection, but please try to create some kind of questionnaire and some criteria.
Yeah, and I think the question from Sven here is maybe the difficulty to, so for example, in the PPE, it's written must be free of rough surfaces, but his last question is, who defines what a rough surface is? Is there a definition for that?
I think that TC or the working group should define this. criteria. If they cannot define this criteria, I don't think that there is a reason to copy and paste this requirement in standard, because I don't see any added value, because the same words are in the regulation.
And then there's a follow-up question from Sven. In case we do not cover the innocuousness testing in a standard, how will a notified body assess this point?
This is not for the notified body to assess that. It is for the manufacturer to describe how is he assessing or addressing this problem. It's not for the notified body will assess what the manufacturer says, but it's for the manufacturer to explain how will they comply with this essential requirement.
Thank you, Ivan.
I think that for this moment, innocuousness is some kind of hot potato, because we don't. Yes, it's very difficult because of high cost of tests in the one side, and then the second, the risk for the user could be very, very, very high if we skip this requirement. So as I said, maybe the approach used by the toys manufacturer could be applicable also for the PPEs. But I'm not allowed to drafting a standard, so I can give a suggestion. Please check how they solve this problem.
Okay, we have another question from Steven Campagnolo. PPE subject to aging from the PPE regulation. If it is known that the design performance of new PPE may be significantly affected by aging, the month and year, and so on, how do you interpret the terminology significantly affected by aging? All PPE, like all products, are subject to aging. Can you give me an example of PPE that is not subject to this requirement?
Stephen, you're testing the helmets, as I remember, mainly. I mean, cyclist helmets. In case of eye protectors, for example, I think the polycarbonate is UV resistance material, so maybe it's an example. But this word significantly is taking from the regulation, and I think it's the role of the drafter of the standard to create some criteria.
In the end, it's something that it should be assessed case by case. I think it's the knowledge of the manufacturer or use standardizers that can know how is it subject to aging in the end each product. So I believe also that most of them are subject to aging, as Stephen is saying, but it's just a matter of indicating it in the standard. That's it. Or when developing the product.
Okay, thank you. Question from Hugo. Can a harmonized standard be published in the UGU while some essential requirements are not covered?
Yeah, the harmonized standards do not necessarily need to address all essential requirements that are applicable to it. It can address them partly. It is like that indicated in the PPE regulation. However, it must be clearly indicated that these essential requirements are not covered.
In Annex ZA.
In Annex ZA.
That is the requirement for the standardization request, That
That's
in the
it.
past it was nobody knows which really were all the applicable essential requirements. In that way now, is a standard user of manufacture, they know that all the essential requirements applicable. That means that some may be covered by the standard, but some others may not be covered by the standard. That is allowed by the regulation.
Let's move on to the next question from Fabio Colombo. In the labs for some tests, it is not possible performing tests which represent reality. In this case, the standard provides a simplified reproducible test method. In this case, how the requirements shall be inserted? Do the requirements be related to real life, or they must be adapted to the specific test?
I'm afraid that if your test method do not relate to the, let's say, real condition of use, this test has no sense because there will be no added value for the user of the PPE. But if it's not possible to create, let's say, objective test method taking into account real situation, you should try to explain the user what are the limits of the use of tested PPE.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
It's hard to answer to this kind of question because
very specific.
Yeah, no, it's not a question of the specific. I think it's a general question, but you are preparing the standard to prove that to then to develop the testing method and requirements to prove that the product is safe during use and to protect users. If there is no link between your test method and real risk at the workplace, I think that the standard has no sense and should not be, let's say, the link should not be published in the official journal because it leads to the accident at workplaces.
Adam Fabio added a comment. He gave an example impact test, for example. I don't know if that helps you.
Sorry, can you?
Fabio added impact test, for example. I don't know if that helps you for answering this question.
I think that the impact test could be linked to the real risk at workplaces, but the second question is how to create a requirement and how to develop the test method. What kind of impact test do you mean also? Let's be.
Question from, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Adam.
If you test helmets to protect against impact, I think it's possible to create some kind of links for helmets, for example. Penetration by nails of the inserts in footwear. It is kind of impact test. It's also possible to create a link. The same for toe caps, for example, because according to this test, products should protect toes against impact with energy 200 joules, which relate to the 20 kilos, for example, falling from 1 meter or something like that. So it's possible to create this kind of link, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. And thank you, Adam. Next question from Geoff. Should aging be indicated by the length of the certification? For example, 5 years. The advice is to replace the PPE after 5 years anyway for the revision of the standard.
And that does not comply with the essential requirement.
No. I think it's
No, that's not possible.
completely not.
No.
Yes.
And it should be adapted to the specific product. So you cannot by default say that. So, yeah.
Okay, next question then from Camille. For some PPE, it may be not possible to take samples directly on PPE for testing. Instead, might representative fabrics of the PPE be used or not?
Excuse me, Jose, can you answer this question? Because it's related to the, I think, clothing. So you probably will have experience in this kind of situations. I'm not sure if he...
But that really, it happens in several standards that the size of the sample to be tested sometimes is not possible to be taken from the product itself. And then it's acceptable to take the sample from exactly the same material from which the PP is made. There is not too much problem. The only that it notified body and manufacturer has to be confident that the supplied material is exactly the same that the one that from which the product is made.
Jose. So for now, all the questions are addressed. We still have some time for the Q&A. So if you attendees have questions, follow-up questions, please jump in. Take the opportunity to have a direct contact with the HAS consultants. You don't have the opportunity every day, so please go ahead.
Hello, Frederic. Can I take maybe the opportunity to launch a feedback poll for the attendees? So that meanwhile, some people are still writing their questions, the others can maybe take a few minutes of their time to reply to three short questions of the feedback form. We kindly ask your feedback in order to improve our webinars in the future. Thank you very much.
Can I address in the meantime, while people is voting, one of the questions that the question of Sonia for Stoita about the problems with the challenge in a testing procedure. So as Frederick was saying, the best thing to do is to address it directly with SEN and specifically with the TC to discuss why do you think the testing procedure is not suitable? Where if there is not an understanding on the, which I hope there will be, because as we said, communication is key. So you may understand why the TC decided to include this testing procedure, and they will hear why you think it's not possible, it's not suitable for the product. So after the discussion, if no agreement was reached, and especially if the TC, if you don't find a halfway there or a possibility to update the standard, you may raise the problem to the national authority and to the commission, and we would discuss it in the expert group, or we would discuss it with the experts also. But it's so the only who can issue restrictions to the standards is it can be raised by the national authorities and the commission. So you have to raise it in case of not finding an understanding. You can raise it to your national authority and to the commission so we can discuss this and see if formal objection to the standard is necessary. Okay. But first, as Frederick was saying, please discuss it with the TC, because we will need to discuss it with them anyway. So first, if you discuss it directly with them, it's better.
Thank you, Ivan, for the follow-up. I don't see any question in the Q&A. Let's wait a couple of minutes. We still have some time. There's an interesting new question. I already have the answer, but I will let the expert answer regarding impact tests for body protectors. It could be possible to define two different tests, striker surface, in a standard and leave the manufacturer choose the one the product is intended to protect. Jose, I think you're muted. Sorry, if you want to take this question.
I think this question is to Jose.
But I think Jose was trying to speak, but he's muted.
Mhm. Jose, do you hear us?
Sorry. No, talking about the impact test, I believe that there are defined many impact tests through the body of the standards. They are impact tests for helmets, they are impact tests for gloves, for example, they are impact tests for clothing for horse riders, etc., etc. There are a lot of different tests, impact tests. And I believe that in general terms, all the impact tests are not so, are quite well defined. Because, for example, for helmets, when the standard for helmets for mountaineering, for example, the impact test is a mass over the helmet. On the contrary, when you make the impact test for a helmet for horse riders, is on the opposite. Is the helmet the one that drops on the on the piece of water? And then yeah, I believe that in fact I are quite well defined. Maybe that there is something that is not, but in general, in my opinion, there is. I don't know, of course, all the standards, but at least in the standards that falls within my field right now is not too much problem.
Thank you, Jose. Question from Klaus. It's about greenhouse gas and krypton. Maybe one of you has consultant could read it because it's pretty technical to me. It's about to use SF6 as alternative. Krypton as alternative.
Yeah, I think it's possible to give references to alternative methods, but you have to add the clear selection criteria for these methods. And also, I think that detection system should be different for SF6 and Krypton. That's a very technical question and quite complicated to answer as well, because Probably I will need more information about this test methods. But for sure, clear selection criteria are needed in the standard.
Oh yeah, maybe to indeed it's quite technical. Maybe if there are different test methods, yeah, there must be a clear, as Adam just said, there must be a clear selection criteria in the standard, so that it's clear and it avoids ambiguity. Question from Shaima. If a harmonized standard does not cover all essential requirements applicable to the product, is it the responsibility of the notified body to establish testing criteria for the essential requirements not covered by the standard in order to do the conformity assessment of the product?
So in that case, as I said before, it is for the manufacturer to show how they are complying with essential requirement and indicate how are they testing the products to comply with this. Then the notified body, each notified body, can do the assessment of these explanations of the manufacturer on their own discretion. It would be good if to avoid such a discretional assessment, to have a harmonized approach, and that's when the coordination group of notified bodies try to find a common solution for this. But the responsibility is not for the notified bodies, for the manufacturer to explain how they are complying with this essential requirement and what are the tests that they are doing. That's it. Then the notified body should assess if they deem it proper, if they deem it enough, what the manufacturer is saying, and the testing procedures are good enough. But it's for the manufacturer to explain.
Thank you, Ivan. There's a last question. Oscar, could you remind us the question you're talking about? And if there are questions, by the way, that are not addressed now, we will come back to you in a written way to the possibly unanswered question. Yeah, I see. It's not a question, it's a comment from Giovanna. Can we stress here that national bodies need to participate to standardization and or to vertical groups? Also apply
to their recommendations for use, to the RFUs, yes. So these are the products, the documents that the notified bodies produce. So yeah, I think that being invited all the time, we can stress, I myself can stress from my side when I assist, when I attend to the meetings with the notified bodies, to try to encourage them to participate in the standardization forum with you, or whenever you send them an invitation specifically. And also with regards to the RFUs, the RFUs are sent for comments to the expert group, including SEN and SENELEC representatives. So, I take the point. I think that it's necessary to pass again to this message to the coordination group of notified bodies, and yeah, that's what I will do.
Ivan.
From Oscar.
Yeah, I need to.
The question. This question. Did he mean the previous question he sent, or he would?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He responded.
So, Oscar, for your question, we will check what was replied. I think the HAS consultants replied, but we will check, and if not, we will come back to you. And if you need further guidance anyway, please contact us. We'll be happy to help you. Voilà, it's 12, so it's the end of the webinar. I see a very last question. Is there a document that describes in detail the scope of the RFUs? Yeah, maybe we can come back to you.
There is the rules of procedure of the notified bodies, which indicates the limit of the RFUs. But the RFUs, the limit of the RFUs have to provide clarity when things are unclear during the conformity assessment of the product. So they should reflect best practices in the conformity assessment of the product. So if there are doubts, for example, when using a standard, they may, as they do, include some clarity, provide some clarity on this. When a standard is revised and the lack of clarity that was in the previous version is not in the new standard anymore, we normally, or notified bodies normally withdraw the RFU. If you find an RFU that you think it's not good, that it was solved in the new versions of the standards, you can raise the point to Jennifer or to CCMC and the commission, and we will try to get rid of this RFU. And in any case, once the RFUs are endorsed by the expert group, it does not stop you to challenge them in the future if you find them in the future. So as well as we can challenge standards anytime, RFUs can be challenged anytime also. So if you find any RFU that you don't agree with, so you just need to raise the point to CCMC and it will they will bring it to me. Okay.
I think the answer to the last question is no. And if the
Yeah, no, that's I see. So can the RFU replace or try to create a standard in its absence? No. The answer is no. But we have seen one exception, for example, in the past. So if there are, so the general answer is no. But sometimes when there are no clear ways to address a specific comment or a specific issue, they try to do it that way. But they should not, as a general rule, replace the standards or be in the position to be standards themselves. Okay, so that's not the aim of the RFUs, and it's clearly prohibited.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ivan. And voilà, I think that was the last question. So I want to thank you all for your participation this morning. Thank you to Jose, Adam, Ivan, Milko for the support. Thank you all for your attendance, and I will leave the floor now to Els for concluding the webinar.
Yes, thank you very much, Frederic. I was going to say the same. Thank you very much, everybody, for this webinar and the useful insights that you shared. I would like to remind the audience that we will share the presentations and the recording afterwards, so you will have it in your inbox and can share it with anybody that is interested in the topic. And then on the last slide here, we see the upcoming webinars and events that Sen and Senelec are organizing with a link to these events, so you can register should you want to do so. So thank you very much and have a nice day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to all. Bye-bye.